White cops frame black pregnant woman, unaware she's a CIA agent. The truth explodes in courtroom. Funny how the people who swear to uphold the law are the first to break it, especially when they think no one's watching. But what happens when they frame the wrong person? When their victim isn't just another statistic, but a CIA agent with a mission? They never saw it coming. Before we continue, endeavor to like, subscribe, engage and share this amazing story. Funny how the people who swear to uphold the law are the first to break it, especially when they think no one's watching. But what happens when they frame the wrong person? When their victim isn't just another statistic, but a CIA agent with a mission? They never saw it coming. Anita exhaled slowly, keeping her face neutral as the cold metal of the handcuffs bit into her wrists. Stay calm. Stay in control. She had been in worse situations before, much worse. But this one was different. She wasn't in a foreign country dealing with trained operatives. She was in her own backyard, in Riverside, California, being framed by the very people sworn to protect. Officer Reynolds yanked her wrists roughly. "Let's go, Miss George." She met his eyes, unwavering. "That's Agent George to you." Reynolds' smirk faltered for just a second. "Yeah. Well, Agent, you're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance." Daniels, still standing by the car, chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Looks like we just made the easiest bust of the night." Anita inhaled sharply, her CIA training kicking in. Observe. Analyze. Stay ahead. She turned slightly, scanning them both. Reynolds, too cocky, too sure of himself. He had done this before. Daniels, less confident, shifty. This wasn't routine for him. He was following orders. That meant one thing. Daniels was the weak link. Anita tilted her head, locking eyes with him. "You don't have to do this." Daniels blinked. "What?" "You don't have to do this," she repeated, softer this time. "You know I didn't have that in my car." Reynolds scoffed. "Oh, come on. Don't try that innocent act." He gestured for Daniels to bag the evidence. "You saw where it was, right? Right under the seat. Classic." Daniels hesitated, just for a second. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. "What's the problem, rookie?" Anita caught that. Rookie. This guy wasn't just nervous. He was new to this. She kept her voice low. "Steady. You don't seem as sure about this as your partner." Daniel's grip on the evidence bag tightened, but he didn't say anything. Reynolds stepped closer, towering over her. "Listen, sweetheart." Anita arched an eyebrow. "Sweetheart?" Oh, he had no idea. Reynolds continued, voice dripping with arrogance. "You think you're special? You're just another criminal who got caught. Now you can either keep your mouth shut, or I can make things a whole lot worse for you." Anita didn't flinch. She studied him instead. His body language. His tells. The way his jaw twitched ever so slightly when he was lying. Then she smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Reynolds' cocky expression faltered. "What the hell are you smiling at?" Anita leaned in just a little. Just enough to make it personal. "You have no idea what you just walked into." Daniels swallowed hard. Maybe we should." "Shut up," Reynolds snapped, spinning Anita around. "You're done talking. You have the right to remain silent." Anita let out a soft chuckle. "Something funny," Reynolds growled. She turned her head slightly, just enough to look him in the eye. "You're gonna wish I stayed silent." The baby kicked again. Anita smiled. This was just getting started. Anita felt the cold steel of the handcuffs tighten around her wrists. She flexed her fingers, testing the give. Too tight, but not unbearable. Reynolds knew what he was doing. Too comfortable. Too practiced. She let them push her into the backseat of the squad car. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in. Through the metal grate, she could see the two officers talking outside. Laughing. Relaxed. They thought this was over. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Anita turned her head slightly, listening. Years of CIA training had made her an expert at reading lips, catching tones, noticing what people didn't say. Reynolds was lighting a cigarette. Daniels was shifting his weight from foot to foot. Nervous, second-guessing. "We good?" Daniels asked, glancing toward the car. Reynolds exhaled a long stream of smoke. "Relax. Rookie, you worry too much." Daniels lowered his voice, but Anita still caught it. "I dunno, man. She doesn't seem like the usual ones." Reynolds barked a laugh. "They all say they didn't do it. And guess what? By the time the paperwork's filed, it doesn't matter. The jury sees the badge. They believe the story." Anita clenched her jaw. So this wasn't their first time. Her baby shifted inside her, a reminder that this wasn't just about her. It was bigger than that. She took a deep breath, then slowly leaned forward, speaking just loud enough for them to hear. "You're making a mistake." The laughter outside stopped. Reynolds turned, stepping toward the car. He crouched slightly, peering in through the metal grate, amused. "What was that?" Anita met his gaze, calm and unshaken. "I said, you're making a mistake." Reynolds smirked. "You don't get it, do you?" He tapped the side of the car. "You're not in control here. You're just another lowlife who got caught. And tomorrow, you'll just be another case file." Anita tilted her head, watching him carefully. She could see it now. The arrogance, the power trip, the certainty that he owned the situation. She let a small smile cross her lips. "You really believe that?" Reynolds' smirk twitched. "Yeah, I do." Daniel, still standing by the hood of the car, cleared his throat. "Maybe we should just take her in, get it over with." Reynolds exhaled sharply, standing up straight. Yeah, let's go." Anita sat back, settling into the seat as the car started moving. The city lights blurred outside the window, but she barely noticed. She was already thinking ahead. She knew their type. Dirty cops, too comfortable in their power, too sure they'd never face consequences. But she had played the long game before. And this time, she was going to win. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled, reporters scribbling furiously, community leaders watching with sharp eyes, and in the back, men in dark suits sat with unreadable expressions. FBI agents. Anita sat still, hands folded on her lap, her expression unreadable. On the surface, she was calm. Inside, her blood simmered. This was their moment of power. Let them think they were winning. Let them enjoy their last taste of control. The prosecutor, a confident man in a crisp navy suit, stood at the front, his smirk almost as arrogant as Reynolds. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, pacing slowly, his voice smooth. "The facts are simple. Anita George was caught with illegal substances in her car. The officers followed procedure, and Anita's lawyer, a short but sharp-witted woman named Veronica Hale, shot up from her seat. Objection. The judge barely looked up. Overruled. Anita didn't flinch. She expected this. Reynolds took the stand next, striding up with the confidence of a man who had done this too many times. He adjusted his uniform, sat up straight, and began his testimony, his voice steady. Trained. Rehearsed. "We initiated a routine traffic stop," he said, looking at the jury, making eye contact, like he had nothing to hide. "When we asked the defendant to step out, Officer Daniels discovered a bag containing a controlled substance under the front seat. He sighed dramatically, shaking his head. It's always a shame when people make bad choices, but the law is the law." Anita almost laughed. Bad choices. He had no idea the bad choice he had just made. Reynolds continued, his voice dripping with conviction. "She resisted at first, claimed the drugs weren't hers. But you know how that goes." The prosecutor nodded approvingly. Some of the jurors shifted, already leaning toward belief. Then it was Anita's turn. She stood slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. She had spent years in rooms like this, courtrooms, interrogation chambers, war rooms where truth and lies battled for dominance. She had seen men like Reynolds before, confident, arrogant, until they weren't. She walked past him, past the jury, until she reached the witness stand. Then she turned. She looked directly at Reynolds, and she smiled. It was the kind of smile that made men sweat, the kind that carried secrets. A flicker of something crossed Reynolds' face. Confusion, wariness. Good. Anita reached into her blazer pocket. The bailiff instinctively stepped forward, but she moved slow, deliberate. And then, in one smooth motion, she pulled it out, her CIA badge. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Reynolds went pale. Daniels, sitting at the defense table, visibly swallowed. The judge leaned forward. "Excuse me." Anita turned her attention to the jury, her voice strong, unwavering. "I am Agent Anita George, CIA Counterintelligence." She let that sink in before continuing. "And I have been investigating corruption in Riverside PD for the past 8 months." A ripple of shock ran through the room. The prosecutor's smirk vanished. The jury leaned forward, fully awake now. The reporters' pens moved at lightning speed. The judge raised a hand. "Wait a minute, you're saying—" "I am saying," Anita continued, holding up her badge, "that the officers sitting before you planted those drugs in my car. But they didn't know they were setting up a federal agent." Chaos erupted. Reynolds shot up from his seat. "Lies." Anita held up her other hand. "I have evidence, audio recordings, surveillance footage, witness testimonies." Her gaze landed on Daniels, her voice sharpening. "Including one from your own partner, Officer Daniels." Daniels' face went sheet white. Every eye in the courtroom snapped to him. His hands trembled as he gripped the table. I don't." Before he could finish, there was a scuffle in the back of the room. Daniels bolted for the exit. Gasps rang out as 2 men in dark suits, FBI agents, moved with terrifying speed, tackling him before he could get 5 steps. The courtroom exploded. Reporters were on their feet. The judge banged his gavel furiously. The jury members sat in stunned silence. And Reynolds. He sat frozen, his worst nightmare unfolding right in front of him. The judge's voice cut through the noise. "Order ort." The room slowly settled, but the damage was done. The truth was out. Reynolds, still stiff, turned slowly to look at Anita. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Anita exhaled, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders. This was just the beginning. Justice was coming. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. Microphones jutted forward, voices overlapping in a chaotic frenzy. "Agent George, how long have you been investigating the Riverside PD? What do you say to the people who were wrongfully convicted? Will there be more arrests?" Anita took a breath, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on her skin. The courthouse behind her still buzzed with the aftershocks of the trial. But out here, standing on the steps, it felt final. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the steady rhythm of life within her. This victory wasn't just hers. It belonged to every person who had been silenced, every innocent soul who had been framed, every life destroyed by dirty cops who thought they were untouchable. She turned to the cameras, her face unreadable, but her voice steady. "Justice has a way of finding the truth, no matter how deep it's buried." Then, without another word, she walked away, leaving the reporters scrambling for more. The fallout. The trial had shattered the Riverside Police Department. The moment Anita revealed her badge, the dominoes fell fast. The FBI swooped in, opening an internal investigation that unearthed years of corruption. Stacks of old cases were re-examined, revealing a pattern: false arrests, planted evidence, payoffs from local criminals to keep the real offenders out of jail. Reynolds and Daniels. Prison. Reynolds had tried to keep up the act, standing tall in the courtroom like a man who still believed he had power. But as more evidence piled up, wiretaps, recorded conversations, a confession from Daniels himself, his confidence cracked. The moment the guilty verdict was read, his shoulders slumped. Reality hit. The once smug officer was now just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. Daniels, the nervous rookie, had cracked under pressure. The second he realized Anita had the FBI backing her, he flipped, cutting a deal to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. But he still got time. No more badges, no more guns, no more power. And the police chief resigned within days. He stood in front of cameras, sweat beading on his forehead, mumbling something about not knowing the extent of misconduct. But everyone knew the truth. He saw the firestorm coming and ran before it could consume him. The city was shaken. Protests erupted. People demanded justice, not just for Anita, but for everyone who had been wrongfully imprisoned. Old cases were reopened. Convictions were overturned, and a new department leader was appointed, a former civil rights attorney who vowed to clean house. Riverside PD would never be the same again. A new beginning. Anita stood at the edge of a quiet park, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The chaos of the past weeks was finally settling. She ran a hand over her belly, smiling softly as the baby kicked. "You did good, little one," she murmured. For months, she had played the long game. She had stayed silent, waited for the right moment, gathered the evidence. Now, the people who thought they were untouchable were behind bars. She had won, not just for herself, but for the single mother who lost her son to a false conviction, for the young man who had spent 5 years behind bars for something he never did, for every person who had suffered in silence. A new life, a new future, and this time, justice would not be denied. Justice is a funny thing. It moves slow, it stumbles, it gets buried under lies. But in the end, it always finds a way to stand up. Reynolds and Daniels thought they held all the power, until they met the one woman they should have never underestimated. If you love this story of justice, power, and sweet revenge, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to drop a comment. Should Anita take on another case? Let me know in the comment.